We just got off of. What is this? Click here when. Yeah, they changed this app. Right when you come on, wouldn't you know?
Oh my, that's funny. What's different about it now?
It just has some different things on it that didn't have before. I updated it right before the show. Let me see if it's working here. Oh, there's somebody coming in. I'm just going to check, just double check. I'll tag you on it.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time.
So you've been down in Florida?
Yeah, I got back a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah. So you're going down there.
On the 7th.
You're going down there quite a bit. Oops.
Yeah, pretty much like once a month.
Right on. Okay, let's see. Okay, Stephen. There you are. Boom. Okay, so you're good there. I'm just going to check YouTube. Yeah, we've been getting suppressed. We got videos taken off. We got knocked off of YouTube for a week. Yeah. All right, so we're coming. So notifications are down. It takes about 20 or 30 minutes for people to know we're on, typically.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And what's crazy is we talked on these shows just briefly, just like touched on COVID and the vax, and we didn't even go deeper, nothing. We didn't. And then I turned on the reels, and all you see, they're going deep now. They're letting all this information out. So I don't know what that was about, but you know.
Wait, so you were getting warnings? That's why videos were being taken down?
Well, we always get warnings. I mean, we get, I get emails. I probably get one. I probably get 5 a week, and have for a long time. But
from YouTube.
Yeah, mostly YouTube. Sometimes Facebook used to be really bad, but they've I don't know what happened. In fact, they're
calm down.
Yeah, YouTube is taking off stuff. Facebook's not taking it off. But yeah, no, I don't know what it is. I don't know what happened. We hit something. We hit some kind of frequency band that alerted the antagonists of the world.
The idiots over there.
Speaking of the antagonists of the world, looks like the walls are crumbling. Of course, talking to you, it's always good because then we can know or get some insight into what's actually going on behind the scenes. But
at least with some parts of it.
Yeah. Well, it seemed
layers to the theatrics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because if you go to social media, they're pushing Trump now, and of course they're dogging Biden. So you go, okay, it's two sides of the same beast. I mean, any way you slice it. I just look at things. Look at things like him. And I don't have any politics. I'm just saying it is what it is. But like that debate where she said, "Well, thank God you're not in charge of the country's law and order," and he goes, "You'd be in jail." Well, he had 4 years to put her in jail. He didn't put her in jail, but I don't think that has to do with him. It's the system itself. But
it's much bigger. More
yeah, like they get in there and then they get a meeting like, "Oh, this is what you can and can't do." So, but yeah. Anyway, what was I going to ask you? Yeah. Oh, since
any comments already started to say.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking about. Let me do this down a little bit. So we talked in November, I think, or early December, and
like late November, I think.
Yeah, there was this corridor that ended 10 years from December 21st, 2012, ended on the winter solstice. 10 years from that Mayan date. Some people were saying that that's when it actually begins. Not that it really matters, but it, for a lot of people I've talked to, the end of the year was a lot of purging, a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of expansion in terms of third eye and so on. So there was a parallel of both the BS, or whatever, the shadow, and then the expansiveness of our awareness and our sensitivities. But almost like we came out into 2023 on the other side of something, and everything has changed. So all of your intel gathering methodologies, can you kind of just start there and tell us what the hell did we just go through and what are we in and where are we going?
I mean, for me, I've always been saying more so that it's more like the 13-year period between 2012 to 2025. That 2025 is for me is the real marker point for
Okay.
that going on the underworld period. And then later on, some other researchers started talking about Sean David Morton and mentioned about that 13-year underworld period that the minds talked about too. But I was saying that for many years. I was like, once 2025 hits that to me is the real ball game of like acceleration. Before that, it's kind of like a shit show in my opinion. From all different
2025.
directions.
Damn, that means we still got 2+ years.
But I mean, 2024. Yeah, I'm still more hopeful about this year. Is like, to me, it's all over the place right now. It's still like, so retro. I guess backtracking a little bit at the end of this past year, I would also agree with you. There's a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of purging for a lot of people at the end of December. I felt like one thing that we need to also just put the intention to clear out for people, because as soon as New Year's Day hit, though, and I was down in Florida, the energy was so different from New Year's Eve, and all of a sudden, myself and a bunch of people were like, "What the hell just happened?" We felt like we got crapped on. Like literally, energetically, we started seeing all these little like negative New Year's resolutions that some of these groups, which later on we tracked out to Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, that they were involved in some of this projection technology overnight from New Year's night to New Year's Day to try to like install this new kind of malware for the new year, like their negative version of New Year's resolutions, to try to like cap people's harmonics like above and below. Kind of remind me of like going from like analog music to like digital music, how they chop off some of the upper and lower harmonics to make it more in between. I felt like they were trying to do that more to people's fields and try to create more of a block above and below to make people more homogenized and more dressed up in the same way energetically, that was leaning more towards their negative timeline that they're trying to fertilize right now. So we started clearing some of that in last group meditation, and I was telling people that we need to put the intention just to clear out any malware that's been put in anybody's field, that we don't consent. What's going on with the video here? It looks so strange.
Well, you're on. What do you think? Here you go with it. If he pops up 4 or 5 times, we know we've been through this every time we get him. You come on. Well, does that mean that? Does that mean that?
It's so funny.
Does that mean like that the I'm just going to use the word waves. Does that mean that the waves or the technology they use, however they project it, would like play on people's doubts and self-consciousness and confidence, let's just say? In other words, the New Year's resolution bringing up their deficiencies in their head versus them being able to go, oh, I can actually do this, or I don't, or is it something where they are projecting, I guess, a certain band of variance that's got parameters on it that they want to contain us in? Or does that make sense?
I would say a little bit of both. I mean, in terms of how long those holographic patterns stick, I think is also proportionate to how much you've resolved in your own shadow and how accountable you are to yourself and how clear you are in terms of where your emotions and your mental states are, and seeing where the deviations might be from something externally imposed, right, versus your own normal state. Right? So being more conscientious. Wait a minute, I just felt this way. Why am I feeling this way when nothing has shifted? So then it's being more clear to delineate. All right, that's not me. I don't need to identify with it, right? I can be able to ask the angels and guides to purge that from my field, and I don't consent to that lower narrative that they're trying to do, like an energetic preloading of this year's narrative that they're trying to contain people in, and say, no, I'm not going to be bound by that script on any subliminal level, So it's let's say a simpler way to put it.
And do you know much about the technology of these waves, or do you know much about that? Like how that actually?
Well, with this particular one, I wasn't too sure how they were using it. I didn't go that deep into it because we were dealing with like clearing out negative extraterrestrial stuff like on a daily basis up until recently. We're like, oh my god. I mean, there are different types of psychotronic systems that they have where they can, I mean, of course, there are different groups that project out. Usually, I know in the past, earlier technologies, we're talking like back in the 90s when they were wanting to create emotional mood management like technologies, they would use like microwaves, and they
Xanax.
What they had found back then was that our different emotional states can be mapped out, like having like a digital map, and they can use a microwave as a carrier wave for that signal. And so when you get hit with that microwave that has that specific structure in it, it stimulates the brain to reproduce that emotional state. So you start feeling that emotional state.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is something that back in 2001 when I had that meeting with one of the main guys at the NSA who had met with me back then to kind of play good cop, like bad cop with me back then. He admitted about that technology to me because I'd been experiencing that before, and I told him about it, and he was like, "Oh," and this is before the cell phone network. Because he goes, "Oh yeah, we were using satellite to target anybody worldwide we want with those signals," and that was a very common practice in the NSA to do that, to mess with people. That
God, the level of fuckery that apparently will be disclosed is just mind-boggling.
And this is back then. I mean, the stuff they have now is more advanced. So this is why I'm saying it's like, even if we reveal what they were doing 30 years ago, people would be horrified. If you reveal what they're doing now, they would really be like, what the hell? So, that's why I think we need more of the white hats to really step up here and get this stuff out more.
Are they there? Are they? I know I've asked you this before, but are they actually there? Is there actually a spy versus spy going on all the way up to the top?
Well, there definitely is. I mean, even a friend of mine that was working for FEMA. He had some contacts in NSA too years ago, and he mentioned, from what he known there too, he's like, oh, half of them don't know what really was going on. The other half were split, between white hat and black hats, and they had their own little internal struggles going on for years. I also was picking up more about a large number of Marines that are in the white hats that are out in Arizona, that have been doing some counter ops and wanting to help out on a bigger level, but they haven't really made themselves public. But it's interesting that we start picking up more on that, at least, so there definitely is momentum going on, but for me it's still pale in comparison to what we need, just because there's so much of this harping going on with our collective. And I mentioned this before our last couple of shows, about the other deals that our government's made early last year with these negative ET groups to try to shift the narrative in our history, it's more closely aligned.
Can you restate those from the last show? Like the deals that were made?
Oh yeah. Well, it's just like it was the beginning of last year where several of the major governments updated their treaties and their contracts with both negative extraterrestrials and also with this parallel Earth. There's a negative parallel Earth, I call it. The Earth is not negative there, but there's a negative parallel reality that has been real pain in our butt for a long time. There's a lot of people living parallel incarnations, and
how does that work? How does the parallel Earth affect anyone or those that are on both of them? Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, maybe I'll make a little back step too. So when I was first shown it years ago, at first in a dream plane with an angel that came in, because I was having a lot of flashes of some of my other incarnations going on that are concurrently happening. Because when you're dealing with parallel realities, it's happening simultaneous to your reality right now. They were showing me that on a quantum level. Well, imagine being in a room and you're seeing 8 Earths around you, and each of the directions there's an image of an Earth, and whichever one you're in the center point. So it's holographic, right? So basically, they were saying that there were 8 other primal parallel universes that the Earth existed in. Now that's a little different than timelines. There's many different timelines, but in a way, each parallel universe has their own set of timelines. If I'm being more technical to it. Yeah. So the idea is that on a quantum level, each parallel Earth is rotated like 45 degrees from each other one. You just think about an 8-pointed star, right? An octagon, you have 45 degrees from each point to make the circle, 360-degree circle. So they're saying that on a quantum phase level, it's rotated. So and that there are ways electromagnetically when to spin and create like this rotation that allows them to open up gateways or portals. And so, of course, our governments have been doing this, for a long time. We've had not just say our government, but certain defense contractors, certain intelligence groups have had technology to open up doorways to these parallel realities. I mean, Preston Nichols, remember from the Montauk Project, and like Duncan Cameron, like they both passed away a couple of years ago. But I mean, they many other whistleblowers from the Montauk Project, they talked about that was one of the goals of that. Aside from mind over matter and all the exploitation of children, was to open up these doorways both in time and as well as to parallel realities. And I was friends with both of them for several years before they passed, and I mean, they're quite a cast of characters they were. And Preston had told me that the one I was talking about specifically, they referred to as Earth 2, and was one of the first parallel Earths that they had went to.
What's the point?
He said he was living.
Now were these?
So basically,
No. Well, okay. So now, were these created, these parallel universes, or these portals were opened up to them? And if that's the case or not, what's the point of creating an access point?
Yeah, access point is more the term for it. This has been going on for millennia because this particular negative reality, I refer to it as a trinicon is the name I got for it. Is like the euphemism name for it. Um, and so they said this parallel reality really got infused more so during Atlantis days, and there was a lot of higher experimentation in Atlantis to generate and access other realities and manipulate timelines more than what we've been told. And So in that reality, though, Atlantis didn't sink, but was won by the dark. So
Oh,
imagine, yeah.
fuck
Fast
that
forward
shit.
that idea.
Yeah, yeah. We need to talk to the
But they did have
council.
other catastrophes.
Yeah.
But they did have other catastrophes later on, so their population is a lot less than ours.
Okay.
So that was one compensating factor. On the counter note, there was several positive parallel Earths that they were showing me, like 6 other ones. On a few of them, Atlantis didn't sink, but was won by the light. And one of them they referred to as like Nova Terra, it's like the new Earth, and that one is already a few of them are already on the Ascension. They have the full contact with the positive extraterrestrials that are here, working with technology in a good way for humanity. So that's more of what we want to steer towards, is this love energy and higher evolutionary energy coming in from these positive parallel Earths. But the problem is that the negative Earth at Trinicon 1, there have been so many exchange programs going on for a long time between some of our governments and some of these underground groups. Not even in modern times, but talking even back, ancient days.
What does
There have
that?
been
What does that mean?
groups
Exchange program.
trying to access.
We're sending our people over there.
Meaning, for example, General Electric is involved in some of this. But it's funny, you never really hear about GE. You think they're just like an innocent company. But I mean, there are other defense contractors that are involved in too. But GE is definitely involved in that technology with some of these agencies. And they the negative Nordic ETs. There's a couple of different negative ET groups that have an exchange program because they basically have been able to create a certain level of control over there that they would love to reproduce here. So part of it's about their desire to hybridize our timelines and our history so that they could steer us more towards that reality or a permutation of that reality that they're trying to create. So basically it's like cross weaving energy lines. And initially they were like targeting people that are having parallel incarnations and seeing if they could use them as like entrance points energetically, as a consent
Wow,
type
that's
thing.
wild. How would
But
they know? How would they know
yeah,
somebody's?
it's
How would they
wild
know
stuff.
somebody's having parallel experiences, incarnations?
Well, for example, say like there'd be somebody working over there in Trinicon, and I mean they have technology to scan in ways that are even hard for me to
Right.
understand fully. uh, but it's there. I mean, we see it. I mean, I've had some clients where they were living, incarnations over there, working for the Trinicon government, and doing different roles. Some in the light, some in the dark, some double agents, and um, so and it's kind of like and there are different agencies that have their counterparts or different programs of exchange. I mean, it gets quite involved. I mean, this goes into a bigger thing of my own military abduction I went through back in the 90s that I've talked a little bit about with you guys. Because the base I was taken to upstate in New York, that was one of the portal systems they have to that parallel reality. And so they were bringing some people from here to there, back and forth. So it's
That's crazy,
and
man.
so one of the groups that it's wild stuff. No, it's wild stuff. And I met a few other scientists over the years who confirmed stuff to me around that too, who are working in some of the black op fields. And and one guy that told me back in '03 was '03. Um, he was a physicist and electrical engineer working both for private sector and for different defense contractors, and for the NSA at times too. And he had told me back then that just confirming some details. He goes, yeah, U.S. has been doing time travel for decades as well as parallel reality travel. And he said back then they were also one reason that they tried to accelerate the human genome study quicker because a bunch of the time travelers were developing health effects, he said. So they wanted to create a personalized electromagnetic field that was unique to their DNA to help them ground more efficiently in time so that they have less health effects from the time travel programs, which was an interesting little detail. And Preston Nichols had mentioned something similar, that they had a certain field that they would create around some of the time travelers to help them kind of ground into their 0 point of the now where they're supposed to be at. And he also said that they wanted to, the scientist told me back then, his name was Ken, that '03 that they were trying to experiment with something new, because he said that a lot of times when they were going back in time to try to change events in order to manipulate the future, it wasn't affecting us here, but it was affecting other timelines. So they were theorizing back then that if they jumped to a parallel universe, almost like two different streams running in opposite directions with an island between, they jump to a parallel reality, go back in time there, and then jump across. They thought that they could potentially and then create more of a ripple effect here. So really, like, their thinking is, crazy how they it's like giving a bad kid a new toy. Then they want to like just play with it and run amok.
You said that this has actually been going on for, it sounds like, centuries. What civilizations might have been utilizing?
That's more on the extraterrestrial side.
I got you.
In terms of our government stuff, yeah.
Well,
ETs have been doing that back and forth. But even like historical figures, like back in Egypt, there's one of the negative groups that also originally comes from that parallel universe. Via that reality is the serpent ET humanoid group. Some people mistake them for like the reptilians because there are, well, I mean, a snake is a reptile, but it's not a lizard humanoid. It's a snake humanoid. Many systems, Nagas in India. There was, in Egypt, there was Apophis or Apep was the negative serpent deity that fought against Ra. And they're an actual real group. I mean, I've worked on a bunch of people too that have had incarnations with them on the dark side, and that are star seeds that kind of infiltrated for a while. Then we've also had a lot of fights over the years with some of these groups that are part of that. There's like ancient serpent brotherhoods that were on the dark side, basically. But this Apophis group originally comes from this parallel reality. So they were involved in exchange in ancient Egypt, opening up portals to this other reality to try to bring in more of their negative, troops and things like that. So it's a whole other, to be a little more technical with it, they actually come from a planet that's in Draco, but in this parallel universe.
Right.
And it orbits a brown dwarf. And this brown dwarf they refer to as their black sun. Like a lot of these negative ET groups are obsessed in like the same way Hitler was with the black sun ideology and theology, and as opposed to the positive real sun. It's like I'm not a fan of the black sun cults. There have been a bunch of these people.
They just sound bad to me.
Other than trying to justify it, I was like, oh no.
Other than the song by Pearl Jam,
Hitler had that, Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You have these deep interplay between like the esoteric occultism, that goes on with certain secret societies, and then their followers that they have, and the higher beings that they worship. So they'll have their little thought forms that they want to promulgate, in order to create control and siphon. And we have the opposite, right? We want the positive ones to come in.
What do you think? Okay, so let's say whether it be the dark hats or the white hats within these governmental structures or whatever, what do you think is their objective in doing this stuff? Is it just to explore frontiers and horizons? Are they just taking orders and doing what they're told for the most part? Or is there any type of altruistic intention to help all the people on the earth because of what they're doing?
Well, I would say the white hats, yeah, no, for sure. I think they're just good old, there's some people that are just more old school patriotic, right? In a sense, and and they're pretty horrified at what they find out once they get in some of these positions, that they're told one thing and realizing certain groups are doing the exact opposite. Like, that some of these people are really about the Constitution, right? Amazing, right? Some people actually support it still. But then the problem is when you start seeing how much anti-constitutional things have been going on, I would be upset too if I was in that position, if I was more naive and then came into that realization, wait a minute, look at all these companies and defense contractors experimenting on soldiers and experimenting on a population and, creating wars for profit and, other groups pulling strings behind the scenes for lobbyists and, weapons manufacturers making money on both sides of conflicts. There's so much things that have gone on, drug trades, human trafficking, even the more basic things. I'm not even talking about the more esoteric side of like secret space program or alien deals yet. Just that basic stuff alone should horrify enough people, right? To be like, wait a minute, what are we signed up for and what's going on in our society? How has it been so co-opted with these other, other groups that seem to have their own infrastructure in place already that are counter to what we're being told we're here for, right? So but I also think some of these groups, some of them got pulled in positions that are pretty dark and they want to redeem themselves and try to make a bridge out of it. So I don't think they all have their hands clean, either in that sense. Right. And I think it gets more complicated when it comes to some of the politician side of it. I don't know. That to me, I have a lot of questions about myself in terms of how they what they could be doing versus what they're not doing, at least publicly. And I'm curious to see, but I'm not, I try to put my faith in. I'm not putting all my eggs on anybody's carton, so to speak, in that way. Waiting for them to
Yeah.
save us in that regards.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, I would
What do
definitely
you,
want to send them light and support, and be like, hey, like may the angels and positivities bless you guys who can help out, whenever we can. But we have to do our own part, and also come together more, and both on the inner realms, like you said, because even on a simple small scale. I talked about this before in previous shows. Us being accountable for whatever unresolved shadow we have that we need to heal and forgive, right, and transmute is like step one, because we need to lighten the load, right, on ourselves personally and collectively. And if we're not being responsible for it, then who else is going to be? Right? Then those things can also be used against us by these dark groups and technologies. Exploit those weaknesses in the auric fields in the psyche. The first thing I try to look for are openings or back doors, old contracts that still might be active from past lives, for example, or a big one that I'm seeing coming up now for all of us pretty much is that, because there are a lot of light workers that have also had some dark incarnations, where they did some pretty messed up things, and it's not about judging it, it's understanding that there are different reasons for that, especially from a galactic level on down. If we've been involved in fighting these negative ETs for like millennia off world, right, in a higher dimensional planet, there are ways you need to want to bring light to those dark collectives, and so
right.
in understanding their strategy as well, you have to understand what tempts people to evolve on the dark side. That means you have to have an experience yourself with that, to fully have compassion towards those who chose that route, so you can transcend the conflict game and be able to pop a hole in their structure, and so there's different layers to it, and also long-term strategy, infiltrating, having a dark incarnation where you maybe have done something on the Earth, for example, in the old days, and you help set up some technology that's being used now. Well, now you have a key to help take it down because you were part of it, right? You're like a Trojan horse on a light in the long term, almost like a deep sleeper agent for the light, that is now waking up, and you have more authority when you realize that to invoke some divine assistance from your higher teams to come in there and help heal and reverse that and hack it. So the kind of converse is also true. We're finding a lot of people are going through a lot of physical energy attacks, physical pain, because a lot of the negative groups now are trying to find anybody that has any dirty laundry in their past lives that they can exploit to try to run these cords and implants and threads to negative timelines through them to try to augment their upcoming agendas, which are not good. So we've been having to do a lot of clearing of clients to be like, okay, you want to release any contracts you had with this Apophis serpent group or with this negative Nordic group, and any deals you made with other negative ETs. When you were with one group, you oftentimes make deals with other ones.
Right.
Right. So that's this a little more technical side, but to give you a little bit more.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, when you drill it down to essentially shadow work, is what you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense that to remove those things obviously helps the individual and I guess the collective pie, because it sounds like these fishing lines they send into your field can only attach if you still have that perception that or you're carrying that shadow, I guess is how I'd put it. So that makes sense. Now, let me ask you this.
I mean, there's still ways for them to try to, sometimes the more suave technology can still stick to a certain point, but in terms of repeated, continual attempts of attack, they definitely need some kind of route to hook into, right?
Yeah.
But other times, if you just hit with some frequency weapon, all of a sudden, what the fuck is that? It may still hurt you if you don't have a contract because it's a physical kind of technology that you may need to develop immunity around, or ask the higher ups, like, no, I don't consent to having my space violated by these assholes. I don't consent to having these, the experiment on, or I'm not part of this new arrangement that the government's made with these groups to, commodify us and use a certain amount of our population as cannon fodder, for their activities or bio experimentation. So some of it comes down to that too, where you're choosing to opt out of these background contracts and be like, no, I'm not, even if you're not doing it personally, it's saying, no, I don't consent to any U.S. government's deals with, the negative Nordic ETs or with the Apophis group, or I'm not part of that demographic. So you can't just try to rezone my property and put your grids here, or your technology in my kingdom. This is my kingdom, my sovereignty. So we definitely need to reinforce that, on a regular basis, because these idiots do like to push in, at times, especially if you're in a big city where they're really trying to install more technology, and you'd be like, no, this is my sacred kingdom, even if it's a small apartment, my area, this is my space, get out of here, and then
So really, they're basically copy and pasting in the physical level from the etheric what they're doing, what you're describing, like coming in and taking over the neighborhood or whatever the case is. And
Yeah,
we can
exactly. Exactly.
and so what you're saying is that it is formidable for any of us as these perceived lowly human beings. We can actually say, as of today, I'm not agreeing to anything my government decides on my behalf, or just taking away the
Oh,
government's.
100%.
Yeah, yeah,
And then reinforcing, replacing with something stronger, like if you know that you're like a Pleiadian starseed, for example, but like, okay, I want to call on then more of my Pleiadian lineage teams to really create like an embassy of light around my location, both internally, externally. Like it's like reminding yourself that you're an extension of the light that you seek to bring into the world.
right.
So it's reminding yourself to say you're an extension of these positive lineages as well as some of the negative ones. So it's giving us a chance to say, no, I don't want to have that dark lineage fractal time loop in my field anymore. I want to have only the positive galactic reverberations coming, say, from my loving family, and I'm giving them permission to create the new codings and templates and infrastructure on the inner planes and the external planes to make my area and my being more compatible with my highest expression, right? So then they can come in more and start to create more sacred landscapes on the inner planes energetically, in your home and around your area, so that if something negative tries to intrude, then they're also now intruding on this higher embassy space, not just you personally, right? It's kind of like how if you're working for an embassy as a diplomat, you have the protection of the country that you're working for, and you're outside the laws of the land that the embassy is in, right? It's supposed to supersede it. That's like diplomatic immunity, right? So in a way, you're kind of reclaiming your own galactic, universal diplomatic immunity from these nonsensical mandates and decrees that have, trying to mess with people so much. So
Yeah.
that's also a little like you have to be a little bit almost like a little spiritual lawyer with it sometimes.
But yeah, that's interesting though, because of all the people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people that do grid work, or there's been a lot of movement over the last few years from time to time. People, I was talking to a friend of mine just recently, and she relocated. Her head didn't like the space because her heart, her soul knew that there was a bunch of old fuckery that went on there, but ultimately she knew that she was there to fortify the area, rebuild the area, transform and heal the area. So I would imagine there's a lot of people that are doing that both consciously and unconsciously. But from a conscious standpoint, I guess it would make sense from what you're saying that, in other words, what can we do at the human level that any of us from where we stand, we could begin to build our own portal, or work with the earth, work with the cosmos, work with our teams to actually build an illuminated point of light on the grid? Was that something?
Absolutely. And yeah, 100%. And that's also the kind of like the point when I'm doing group work with people and also individual work. That's kind of what we're working on as well with that. So like in the last group meditation, also happy Chinese New Year's for everybody, because this is we're finishing up the week for this for me is the real New Year. I always feel it more during like the Lunar New Year calendar for Chinese New Year's than I do for normal Western calendar. So also a reason why there were things going on a week leading up to Chinese New Year's, but there was a lot of extra attacks people were going through, because these dark groups are aware of the power of cycles and the power of cycles to reinforce previous things that have gone on, right? So that's why it's even more important that we stabilize our intention during, say, new moons, full moons, different, equinoxes, solstices, because those are powerful nodal points, right, in the time corridor of ancient civilizations that are coming into the now. So both negative and positive groups use those time periods to try to etch and imbue their templates, to get greater gravity, because they want to flow with the wave of change as well. So if they get enough people to get co-opted and believe that they have, and convince them that they should carry that other weight with them, then the collective starts to regurgitate that same pattern again in the new cycle. And that's something we're trying to nip in the bud, is this like oppression that's going on this collective psyche level subconsciously, to try to keep humanity in this old loop of like the necessity for like war and resource scarcity and separation thinking. There was a bigger opening going on recently that a few of my other friends felt too with that, but then there was another energy came in that was trying to just re-imprint that. And so we're kind of like still in the middle of trying to say, okay, collective, we don't need to keep taking this abuser relationship with these oppressors in our field anymore, and this, and enter a higher level. We can really start to say enough. We don't need to have a war template anymore in place here. We don't need to have a resource scarcity mentality anymore. But because there's so much of that programming going on in the media and so many limited narratives still being spoken about around that topic, it confuses a lot of people, and they start giving their permission away to those ideas when they're not really valid anymore. Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like we start to hit Groundhog Day button again. When we have the power to escape it much quicker, if the collective actually makes that choice consciously more, or even unconsciously, starts to be like, no, enough is enough. We had enough of this stupid drama. Let's move on. So we need to kind of be the bit of a chelation team in there, shining more light and hosting it down more, so that there's more openings in the clouds that these dark groups create around the collective psyche. And be like, no, we're not just here. We want sunshine. We want our galactic central sun teams to come in here, and our galactic, infinity justice councils to blast more love and light, because we're their ground crew. Right. But it's it's darkest before the dawn, and we're in that period still. And it's
wow. It's like it's like storming the beach at Normandy, man. Where's the air cover, man? Where's the air? Hey,
exactly. No, trust me. No, and that was the thing too. Leading up to Chinese New Year, I mean, I had a lot of my right side of my face was killing me the whole week. Just before that, I had 3 different people helping me send stuff, because I was like, man, they keep attacking the crap out of this area, and it was a couple of different groups doing it. But and we realized, at the last group meditation, why part of that excess attacks were happening, because we ended up taking down a big part of their grid on a higher level with the higher ups wanted to come in. This was this last week during the first day of Chinese New Year's. And I'll actually probably post the link, I think, for that Dropbox for you guys, if anyone wants to hear it. But it was the last Chinese New Moon meditation.
Which was when?
And this was last weekend.
Okay, last weekend. Okay.
Yeah, I was on Saturday. Basically, Chinese New Year's Eve. Basically, it comes on the new moon.
Now, when you do these, you're doing them tornado in Houston. Is there a tornado here? Ronay, I sent you an email.
Now.
Yeah. No, there was a crazy thing happened a couple of days ago. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Now, I look at and I'm not saying I'm right, but I look at all the players, and that certainly includes far beyond the humans that walk the top of the earth. So I know there's many, many other players, let's just say in the physicality, even though we may not see them in physical form all the time or much of the time. But they all are players in this hologram, right? So my question is, do you feel that there's any group that has access to, besides us, to the Akashic and to the soul lineage or human lineage of any individual? In other words, do they know who you are, who I am, and you know what I mean? Like, do they have that kind of information?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Oh, I mean, and that's something also. Speaking about consent, I would say it's also helpful to try to, not give consent to that either, because I've experienced that directly, and many of my clients have too, where these it's harder to be veiled in that level sometimes, because when you're dealing with 4th, 5th dimensional beings that are that are very psychic and they're looking through time in a different way than we are, it's very easy for them to kind of scan timelines and history for people, and right. So. But partly, I would say it's helpful to say no, that we don't consent to them hacking it. At the very least, definitely don't consent to them hacking into any of our Akashic records or timelines, because I've seen some pretty extremely messed up scenarios that have gone on, but small cases of it. But where with some of these groups, physical ones that are working with the negativities, have done stuff where they've actually physically dug up, like archaeologists, dug up certain bones of some people that were in the MyLab programs, SSP program, dug up certain past lives of them, and we're trying to use them in Frankenstein genetic projects to harness energy, hack into their timeline. It's so effed up. We recently was going on too. We're like, this is disgusting. So, but being able to, put the intention, no, we definitely don't consent to any kind of hacking or we don't agree to any negative insertions in our timelines. And
right.
About a year ago, I saw that for the NSA, that they were trying to do that as well on a bigger level. Where did you just go here? I just disappeared. Sorry. This is okay. Where they were trying to almost mine time. That's a word, or do subliminal inserts in our subconscious of our memory about time in the past, and try to rewrite a little bit there, so that we begin to believe a certain narrative happened that maybe didn't happen.
Right.
And or where they try to reinsert a contract that you already released. I had stuff, because of my experience with these idiots over the years, and I had released when I was going through the process of revoking any contracts that any of my alter personas or any part of me that was under duress years ago might have made with NSA, I started getting more attacks. And just before around that time period, about a year and a half ago, and I was like, oh my God, when they were doing this, I was like, leave me the hell alone. I'm not part of your stupid experimentation team anymore, and then I literally, I was talking about some other projects going on. Then I get a letter from a friend of mine who works for Homeland Security, and her friend had a meeting with somebody at NSA, and this guy in the NSA is he monitors apparently a lot of the people in the SSP community, and he told so this friendly in the Homeland Security, her friend dropped my name to her, saying that his contact in the NSA said that I was back on their shit list again, that they may want to have a meeting with me to ask me more questions about some of the programs I was talking about.
Would that be something? Would that be? Would that be something you, the human, would
I was laughing because I'm like, fuck you, I just broke contracts with you. Now I actually get a physical letter in the mail from a friend telling me that shit.
Would that be, I mean,
I was like, wow.
If it came to something like that, and they wanted to talk to you, would that be something your human would be conscious of, or would that be something?
I was just laughing first because I'm saying you also experimented on me for years in these facilities and projects. I'm like, you reached out files and what you did to me. Why do you need to ask me anything? I guess unless they're just more like newbies or they're wanting to figure out what I know about current things. No, yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't say like I'd be against just talking. Especially if they were white hats. I would, that would be nice. But I didn't get the vibe that this guy was.
How the hell would you know? I guess that's where our gut instincts and our intuitions.
Yeah, exactly. And also the timing. I'm literally breaking contracts with them, and then I get a letter saying, "Now you're on our shit list." I'm like, what? So it was just a bit of an intense like confirmational thing, But yeah, so the point is that that example should, because what they were trying to do is that they were trying to reinsert the contract in my subconscious and other people that I've worked on who had been involved in certain programs in the dream plane and be like, hey, you're still with us, right? And on this, or your altar's still working for us, right? Or you still give us permission to influence you. I'm like, no, you can't friggin' retroactively, subconsciously try to insert.
They're trying to gaslight. They're trying to gaslight you. They're trying to tell you that you did. Yeah, they're trying to make you forget that you broke the. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
do you think after all the information that's come out, and especially the last 10, 11 years, so many people, I mean, I'm amazed at seeing some of these reels, these young people talking about Atlantis. I mean, it's just out there. And I realize that a lot of it's, we might think is real information, might not even be real, but do you think that there's still an intention, given all the information that's out there, to put forth like Project Bluebeam, a fake alien invasion? Because that would seem to me, in bringing in a one unified world religion, that would seem to be the template that was used throughout history. Of course, this is extrapolated to ETs, at least, if you look back the last 6,000 years, but you still had the same type of pattern. Do you think that's something that they're still going to go to? Because I don't see anything bigger than that could unify or homogenize everybody.
It's definitely still in the works. I mean, I know others have seen that kind of timeline fade and come back and forth. So it's something that I haven't looked at it too much recently, but a few months ago it was in the air pretty strong, and then it was like almost like two opposite timelines that they were thinking about doing. One was that, or where they would then do a Project Bluebeam thing where they would or they would stage a fake alien invasion, and then they would offer the solution would be actually just another negative ET humanoid group that they were presented as the savior, so that we would be more conducive to being alliance with them, right, as opposed to say the real positive ETs that want to come down. Or the other side of it is, the other flip side is wanting to suppress it so much and like go after people who are trying to connect to positive ETs and just really try to cut off the connection. And in the way they can do both at the same time, because I've seen that also happening where they're really desperate to try to cut off starseed connections to our galactic family in different ways and different structures they put around the air and the atmosphere, and we have to kind of cut through it. So quarantine, containment, and then shift the narrative are all kind of blended together. I hope they don't go that way, but it's it's something that I mean, like I've talked before in previous shows, we avoided a couple of actual real threats, that were going to happen, past couple of years, that the higher Andromedans and positive ETs did come in and stop those timelines from manifesting, where they were actual authentic, scenarios that were already messed up. But the point is, there's even more reason why we need to say, okay, no, we don't consent to any shenanigans or deceptive ploys around our extraterrestrial families, and that we want to really work with more of our positive starseed families to say, hey, because what I see is that 2029 is still a possible timeline for the positive ETs to do their mass landing, positive landings with us. If we get our act together before that, and there are groups from Andromeda and groups from Jupiter that actually want to come in for that too. And the thing is that there's so much more life than we realize, even in our local, solar system that's multidimensional. But yeah, I mean, if those scenarios happen, like you mentioned, I think it'll be very interesting to say the least, because I think a lot more positivities will be given more leeway to do stuff if that happens. It's kind of like a lot of times the light waits for the dark to make a certain move, then they do counter moves in a bigger way or permission slips.
Yeah, it's like we don't. Yeah, it's like the light doesn't have the approval to strike back until the certain shit is violated to a certain extent anyway.
But this is also why we need to keep reinforcing it, because a lot of us have been on councils. A lot of us have past lives on higher light councils too, and I've had a lot of clients who've been on councils reincarnated wise, and and we need to put more intention out to be like, okay, like to report back the violations, because there have been egregious violations that these negative ETs have been doing, especially this past year, to people that I've been trying to report on and complaining about. And it's like being a spiritual lawyer, being like, we got to file a petition to the higher light councils for that we can request more intervention in a direct way to stop these exploitations, because some of them were just getting so outrageous with their ballsy attempts to like really mess with people in a very painful way. And then we were like, this is bullshit. We can't keep going this way. We got to stop this right now. So it's gotten certain boiling points, even myself and people I know and clients, we had to really go up there at a higher level, like, no, we need now, this has to stop, whatever this is. We know if it's a past life thing, especially if we've already released contracts around it and they're still trying to aggressively send in stuff into people's apartments, like these like more like 4D negative technology, invasive energies that were coming in, like AI stuff. Like, no, get the fuck out. We don't consent to this. This is not, So they'll need to, sometimes we need to call in specific galactic allies to come in to help, quarantine those negative influences. The same way you would call in angels to help you counteract and clear negative astral entities or demonic forces. It's like calling on positive galactic beings and your higher self to help counter the negative ETs is a natural part of the work.
No, I can see that.
So it's because they're
yeah, I can see that, like you were talking about the waves, the fishing lines they send into our field, where we have from this incarnation or previous incarnations, we have some dark shadow that we haven't cleared yet, and they can kind of like hook into it. I can see that where, with all the talk about AI, where that's almost the same template, where AI, let's just say the internet and the handheld, can reinforce or hook into those shadows, or it could actually, as a lot of people have demonstrated, be used for a positive illumination. Like when we create our own groups, or we create certain initiatives and use the internet to expand awareness of it. Yeah, that's interesting. What was
absolutely.
I going to ask?
And just to go back to something you asked earlier that I didn't finish answering, when we were doing that Chinese New Year's meditation last week. Maybe I'll actually did I copy that? I think I got distracted here too. I think I copied it. And this one, so I'm gonna actually post it. Where can I post this at?
Put it on.
Put it. Write my own comment here?
No, put it on my Facebook page. Can you go to my Facebook page? And then I'll.
I got you. Oh yeah, I'll just send it to you as a message. I'll send it to you as a personal.
Oh yeah,
message,
and then I'll copy and paste it and put it out there.
And you can put in the comment section or something in there. Yeah. Basically, there's so one of the groups I talked about on the show, I think it was last time I was with you or the time before, I can't remember now. They were an alien group that works with the Joker clown archetype, like full card energies. They work a lot with this negative circus symbolism, negative funhouse mirrors. I think I mentioned that last time. I can't remember now. It was either the last show or the show before. I talked a little about that group. They're another group that also does a lot of work in that negative parallel Earth. Oh, wait, why happened there? Why is it so long? That link looks giant. Because Facebook made a giant link.
Yeah,
that looks ridiculously huge. Does that even work? Let me click on it and make sure it goes there.
Yeah, it'll work. They just have
it just goes follow link. Ask you to follow link. I see. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I can't.
It'll say follow link outside of Facebook.
Yeah, I can't put it on. I'm trying to put it on YouTube. Here, I'll get the shortened version and put it on YouTube.
No, yeah.
Would you?
So in this one, so what happened? This was that negative Joker ET group. I call them that, but they actually look like little. I call them raisin heads to make fun of them, because they're short, almost like grayish ETs. Like, do you
like to piss these malware ETs off?
Well, I mean, if they're already attacking me, if they're already attacking me, I have to like, you know, do like a neutralization a little bit where you don't get fearful for them, and you have to like, you know, you can pick on them a little bit, be like, hey, this is like, it's just not to give them any more credit than they deserve, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, so it's kind of a, so I call them the raisin heads as a euphemism, and you know, because the way they look is a little bit like raisin headish, but they they'll project these crazy mirrors in people's auric fields and chords and stuff to like distort your perception of people and relationships, and it's like a nihilism, lower anarchist energy that they want to create depression, and they were working a lot at a Buckley Air Force Base in Colorado. Was one of the places that was really being a pain in my butt. A lot of clients that were they were combining technology and really broadcasting out to a lot of people. But then it got really out of control for that week just before Chinese New Year's. I'm saying, okay, this is really too much now with this group. And so in this meditation here, which normally I don't do the more heavier stuff in the normal public meditation. Usually that comes when I do smaller groups and we
Uh-huh.
certain people I invite for that work. But this just came in so strong where the Andromedans and higher Saturn, like light patrol teams are coming in and they're saying that we need to take down this larger grid that this Joker group was creating, because I didn't even realize that they had created already a global overlay of their energy grid that we don't want. So the higher ups are coming and help us focus on dismantling and giving and us acting as witnesses. You know, we don't consent. Humanity does not consent to this level of their dark grids. And it kind of looked like first layer of the grid was like a negative vertical funhouse mirrors underground that were shaped in like labyrinths, like as clusters. And then on top of that was like a horizontal layer, like a floor, you know, having a walls beneath it to support it, of mirrors that was in the ground. And then they had these weird towers, spiral staircase towers that were acting as giant antennas on the inner planes to try to bring in energy from their negative homeworld directly to this grid here. So, and that was only, that's how they kept accessing more people that didn't have contracts. I'm saying, wait, how do you guys keep going into so many people's homes so easily? I'm like, oh, there's this effing grid that was set up that through the military liaisons that we need to say, not only do not consent to it, we need to help take the friggin' thing down, these, you know, layers of it, because this is not what Gaia is agreeing to, and it's not what we're agreeing to. So the Andromedans and a lot of beings from Saturn and angels are coming in last week in this group meditation to like take it down and replace it with a beautiful light grid, which was in part consisted of these like little pretty, like imagine like a mini Saturn like bubble balloon, you know, like say like size of a volleyball, like a little floating mini Saturn, you know, size of a volleyball, as like these. So they were calling them a Saturn, like they were like these infinity love orbs of Saturn, or Saturn infinity love orb network was how they were referring to it. And so they were coming out from the Earth's core and combining together like a meshwork of all these ringed orbs to create a new foundation floor that was part of the positive Saturn support for Gaia's ascension. And then on top of that, they were building these beautiful towers, the rainbow light tower obelisks, that were acting as a new relay to bring more energy in from the higher light councils and higher dimensional beings on Saturn to help us override this other crap and provide a more cleaner space. So, you know, so basically they're like thought forms that are combined with actual technology and projections that positive or negative beings do, right, to help enhance their space on a given planet. So this is the idea, is that we want to create more of a hospitable environment energetically, you know, on the inner planes, mentally, emotionally. It's almost like the background coding behind the website. You know, there's like a certain behind the scenes layering that makes it more conducive for what we see in the front layer to appear. So there's a lot of this work goes on more in the unseen, because it's more the infrastructure, what's behind the veil of the curtain stage act, you know, and like getting rid of some of the props that we don't want anymore. You know?
If we look at the
so
if we look at the narrative that Mother Earth Gaia is herself ascending into, let's just say, 5D consciousness. If number one, what are your thoughts on that? And two, if you follow that, you know, the gist of that narrative, does that mean or not mean that if that's the case, that certain things would not even be in the field anymore, such as some of the you know, species you're talking about?
Well, yeah, that's a couple layers to unpack with that. So for me, I like, for those people on here that are familiar with the Law of One books, I mean, those are some of the earlier channel books. I mean, they were written back in the late 70s, but they became a little more popular and a little more undergroundish. But you know, I mean, David Wilcox did a whole bunch of series on Gaia TV about the Law of One books, and then a bunch of other people started doing more stuff about them. For me, those were like my go-to, what I experienced when I read those when I was very young. and they to me have kind of shown themselves over time, like their cosmology of like how they describe dimensions and evolution. Like they basically related to the chakra system that souls and planets go through the rays similar to what we have in
Okay.
our rainbow body. So we have a
Okay.
planet that's, like Earth is in yellow ray in the stomach, and it's moving to green ray, which is the heart chakra. So for them, they refer to the word as like a density instead of dimension, and they refer that we're going into the green ray density, which is a fourth chakra, fourth density. So they refer to that, So some people are maybe say fifth dimension, maybe it's the same thing as that, but so I think there's a lot of confusion in terminology because of systems, and so I like to use more of their system where it's more of a fourth density heart chakra vibration that we're going into on a quantum level, on an energetic field level, and they define more fifth density as like the blue ray, and that level beings that are evolved on the positive side, are more in light body form, and they can choose whatever form they want to manifest in, as well as having more access to time directly in terms of being outside linear time and being able to time travel with their full being, not without technology. So, but the thing is that those books also to me were great because they also kind of put a template of understanding where the idea of like, but they didn't call it this specifically, but it's like the idea of how the dark can also evolve into like a negative ascension, where souls that choose service to self versus service to others, or left-hand path versus right-hand path, that there is an evolution to the dark side. And this is where the negative ETs fit into that paradigm, because they're not all just only physical. That's why, that ones that evolved on, like they all started on the basic planet like Earth or something similar. And then they, through their experience, decided to go explore that path further. So when they graduated at the end of their cycle and they incarnated on a planet that was suitable for that school of experience, the same way the light does, and then there are those who recycle, who start the program over because they didn't really make a choice how to go yet, kind of like in the gray zone, but the thing is that on the path of the negative ones, they can actually go up all the way up to six density, and that they can't go past that. Whereas the positive can evolve way past, and so
Wow.
this is what people, and I think a lot of the New Age spiritual community don't understand, is that you're dealing with multidimensional negative extraterrestrials. It's not just physical, and so there are planets where the planet itself that they evolve on has a negative polarity to it.
Right.
So it's not just the consciousness of the beings; the actual structure of the planet is a school for that experience. So it has to have that flip of the polarity as this innate makeup.
But we're talking,
and so yeah.
but you're talking polarity. Let's just say outside this realm. Is there? I mean, I would think that in this realm you have the polarity, but you have the duality, you have the distortion aspect,
Yes. Yes.
which would probably be less prevalent outside of this realm, and I guess is becoming less prevalent, or by theory, or by our wishes and pipe dreams, maybe is it becoming less prominent? The distortion. It certainly feels like it, but I mean, how do we know? But I mean, do you feel like that it's becoming less dualistic as the days go by?
No, no. Right now, it's more extreme polarity. But I would say it's more dual. I would say it's almost like a sifting, because it's like the way the idea of 2012 to 2025, where we're going through the Mayan underworld part of the calendar. We're really going through the depths of the collective underworld psyche area before we rise up into the new dawn idea, where it's becoming the alchemist and being able to integrate all that deeper Plutonian, Scorpionic kind of splunking that we're going through, and facing and seeing all these extremes, like levels of bullshit also coming in together. We can make some gold hopefully, or make some diamonds out of all that charcoal with all that intense pressure and heat, and if it doesn't crack people at the same time. So the thing is that a lot of these groups that I've seen that are negative, that are coming from negative 4D 5D planets, and they're working with our governments, they're really trying to push this shadow extension of their realm onto the Earth. So it's almost like Earth has been going through an experience where she's getting a quick lesson in what negative 4D planets have been about before she becomes a positive fourth density planet. So it's almost like we have to face the shadow, not just of our own reality, but of this next level that we're entering into. And that shadow of that next level is pretty friggin' heavy, and so, but the light is so beautiful past that point, because positive fourth density worlds, like with the Pleiadians or 4 or 5 dimension, their love is their base existence, right? And they're all working together in an incredible harmony, and mind over matter abilities are all present with everyone there, so it's a very different conceptualization to have these two extreme, almost like heaven hell planets in a way from our perspective, right? Because imagine a group, there's like a reptilian homeworld, all the beings are there, self-serving and serving their own little empire goals, and it's a pretty miserable place to be, in that sense, even for ones that are living there, but they ultimately chose it on a level, and they have the choice to get out of there, and go back to light too. It's not like they're sentenced to be there. This is their own choice has led them to that particular point of exploration. But the thing is that those groups get very cocky sometimes in their laurels, because they've been around for so many millennia in manipulating history here and influencing bloodlines of powerful families that have kept certain bloodlines that have connected to these specific ET groups. They don't want to let this real estate go. So that's why the higher ups need to come in more in ourselves. But no, we're releasing retroactively in time these old deals that are made between different organizations, bloodlines that have ruled humanity at different points, no longer apply. We need to really stick to that in a stronger way and be like, no, we're here to reinforce the positive bloodlines, our positive galactic family lineages that want to bring us loving DNA, loving evolution of our DNA from the 2-strand all the way to 24 strands is what wants to come in, especially with the new energy from the sun. Especially 29, 2030-ish, there's a lot more of that coming in. So that's really a powerful time period coming up where that energy is really going to be pumping in, and gives us an opportunity to really create a whole new foundation. But again, the idea is that these other groups that are more empire builders in their mentality, they don't want to go down without taking people down with them or without a fight. So we don't want to feed that narrative, but we have to be aware of what's going on around us so that we understand, hey, wait a minute, so many people got co-opted with the vaccine, and so many people, that energy and that nanobots and the nanomagnetic particles is literally spinning in a certain way that is feeding this negative timeline technology system. When I worked on clients that had that, we had to deactivate that, and certain Arcturians and angels and Pleiadians were coming into, and Andromedans to help deactivate the nanobots and the nanomaterial. So it can be reversed and stopped. But the point is that because so many are already still in that vibration, it's creating a mixed signal between us and the universe of what we want. Even though it's not really what the collective has agreed to, who took it didn't necessarily realize that they were being programmed with the transhumanists.
It's being sustained. Agenda. Yeah, it's still being sustained because it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. So we need to be able to override that and build up enough of our positive love magnetism, a spin field, in a way, space, so that we're creating a counter vortex to what the dark groups are doing, and open up the light, more light through the clouds. Be like, no, we're here, and we want to be an extension of these beautiful realms that we came from. And some of the ones in the Pleiades, I feel like I'm supposed to talk about a little bit about more of them too in a minute. Definitely, a few of them want to be more kind of introduced, just to kind of call in more.
This is a good segue. This is a good segue because I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I actually had another question in front of it, but since you kind of said that, would you ever do a private session, like this, like live streamed?
That's a good question.
Like if I came in,
yeah.
Like if I can, I don't mean right now. I'm just saying, I think obviously that would be. Well, I think that would be really interesting because I've obviously been married to a practitioner and sometimes being a proxy and even doing sessions with her, and then being in other sessions, being exposed to other things. I think there's something beyond the words that comes through in sessions. You would know. You've been doing this for years, but
100%.
You're a bit more unique than most anyone I've run across, and I would be interested to see what comes through.
Yeah.
What your methodology is and where that would go. That would be really interesting to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
That could be quite fun. It could be interesting because usually I do them more solo unless I'm doing a group work. Then we have the group people kind of funneling. If I'm doing an individual session, usually it's more private because I don't, they can get cross chatter from other people's fields coming in there, and I want to maintain,
I see.
privacy for the person.
Or maybe we do it privately and then we just put it out, instead of having.
Oh, that could also be that could be a good thing.
Yeah,
that could be possible actually. Yeah.
And let me ask you this: like in an event,
and at some point, I like to do some group maybe meditation on one of the shows too. With the
well, we could do that. Yeah, you just let me know. We'll set it up, and we've done it before. But
that could be more fun too. I feel like.
Yeah, I think that would be. Yeah, I'd be up for that. Yeah. We could do that.
Yeah, because definitely calling in the force, and I know that you also could have attention. So I know before I was asking about doing something like that, and my guys were like, "It's not the right time to do it yet." There were certain things going on in the background that would have created too much friction at the moment, but I think we're going to go more into a space where we
What
can do that and counter that.
cool? What happens when what happens if anything, or what does it mean? Let's just use this example. The queen apparently transitioned to whatever her body gave out or whatever. But from an energetic standpoint, symbolic standpoint, you know, in our reality, does something like that, or even that particular case, does that mean anything? Was that like a sign of you know, a vacuum, or some of the dark being sucked out of the realm, or anything like that, or does it mean nothing?
I mean, they also have their own little ritualistic things. So sometimes when things happen on very powerful dates, it's not always an accident, you know. So it depends on whether it's a synchronicity, or whether it's planned by them, you know, as a kind of succession of power to some other individual or group. You know, you have that also going on in the background. I mean, in her case specifically, I don't really remember. I didn't really tune in too much to find out, because there was so many other things going on at that time. I think I got distracted and just put it in the back burner. So I don't really have any intel on a higher level about that one. There definitely were different like negative hive mind energies and like false. It's not just, it's healing the duality within the polarity is definitely an important thing, because it's like there's been so much power given away to false patriarchal figures and false matriarchal figures, right? You want to have the opposite. You want to be supported by inner divine mother and divine father. That creates a space of unity between the two, right? But that also implies that we have to heal our own relationship to, right, mother father, both in our own physical lineage as well as into our own experiences of, you know, if you're a mother father, if you have family, or past lives you had families, you know, and being able to see, you know, where we've been, you know, where there is shadow there is really important, because there's been a big fracture even in the earth level. Like there's certain group work we've done where we need to help heal Father Earth's energy from being disrupted, because Father Earth was more prominent in the Egyptian system as Father Geb, and it was more Sky Mother Newt. And Father Geb, as like a counterbalance to Gaia, there are certain locations globally where his energy is supposed to express itself more. And we found that a lot of these locations that we've been working on have had been major exploitation going on there, with underground bases or labs built there, or different facilities where they've been like just messing with the flow, like, you know, adding counter energy, trying to spin it the other way, doing experiments on people there. And it's like, and we're like, wow, this is really effed up. So there's been, you know, more help coming in to try to heal some of those points, but we need to do more work on that for sure. We're also seeing that there's other points globally for like some of the chakra points, and also tree of life points have also been exploited to try to hack in the humanity's individual template through hacking into the earth, you know, using that as above so below idea. So there needs to be more group work done where we really say, no, we're not going to be victimized from anything going on in the collective level. And we don't consent to these locations being interfered with in the way they are. We want to have positive ascension codings going into these locations, so we can have a loving, supportive background where harmony in relationships, both individually and partnerships, can materialize more strongly. Because sometimes these effects create interferences, you know, and interpersonal relations have nothing to do with you, because they're really pumping up some of these signals to like create that fraying or that splitting, you know, the dynamic tension between masculine and feminine that doesn't need to be there.
There seemed to be
so that's something else.
There seemed to be a boatload of that from about July through November. I mean, there seemed to be just massive amounts, you know, seen in different ways. You know, of course, the personal, but a lot of relationships, you know, either took some time apart or permanently separated. I mean, a lot. And as well as groups, you know, being challenged, you know.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to like, how much are people willing to look at their own shadow so that they don't project or deflect their own shit on others that they maybe have had close stuff with before. Because certainly divide and conquer is the methodology being exploited, you know, ad infinitum these days, you know, with all these things going on. At the same time, it's important to call out stuff, you know, and I think that's, you know, fine tune between, you know, healthy critique versus, you know, blaming game and, you know, judgmental stuff. How do you, you know?
But how do you, or someone like you, because I know it's a challenge for me at times, how do you, like when you go in and do your work and work with, you know, a group or whatever, and y'all go in and kind of disentangle the fuckery, do you have to, or you get presented with something that's absolutely atrocious and horrific, do you have to like go in and decompress and bring balance to the situation or the entities that you're opposing? Is Is that like something that you have to? Does it make you more effective, or can you be pissed off and do it? Because that'd be a lot easier.
Honestly, I've seen both come out at different times, but usually it's better to come a little more neutral with it, because because the charge is something that could feed the dynamic that you don't want to feed.
Right.
But there are certainly times when you need to be like using your willpower, and maybe some animalistic energy can come in to like like really cut the cords of like enough, but then you let go of that charge, and it's more like
Right.
you're applying that shamanic principle of engaging that archetype as an ally, like roaring like a lion, or calling in Sekhmet or Mother Lion energy to come through you to cut through some cords or negative webs, like, and then you come back and you bring the angelic in. So it's a bit of like alternating between like the positive animal kingdom realm and the angelic and the galactic, and realizing you're a convergence of all that. So if we only use one resource and separate ourselves from the others, I think that we're missing out on some of valuable spectrums there that could potentially help us find more balance. We realize that we've come to help evolve all those kingdoms together here, and if we judge one, it's like I used to make jokes with some people who are overly judgmental. They're overly judgmental vegans. And I personally, whatever, I don't care what people are with that, but I like my chicken kebab, and my white fish, right? So, but I'm like, okay, well, what's your power animal? They had a power animal as a tiger. I'm like, well, is your tiger vegetarian? I'm like, are you going to judge your tiger? Because it's like this simple idea of like logic applied to spirituality. But then you have some people that were vegans that and they were trying to feed their dogs only vegetarian food, and I'm like, stop projecting your anthropomorphic value system on like an animal. First of all, it's like you're thinking knowing what's best for that animal because because you chose that path. So there's a lot of that hidden judgment layer of like just. It's I think their path has to be applied to all, and they have to be careful with that idea, and there are certainly pros and cons to that, any choice like that. But how did I get into that example? But there was some other point I was trying to make with that. Where did I go with that? What did we talk about just before I got into that?
Let me think. Hang on a second. I can't remember. Shit. I have an excuse. I'm 61.
Female, yeah. So funny.
Now somebody.
About healing and confronting some of the negative forces that we may encounter. In terms of like because the more that's usually why also when I do some of the more intense work, I would usually have more like select people that I know already energetically what they're about to participate in some of that, so that we're more like a clear, coherent magical circle together, so that and I know that we kind of have each other's back, or at least a few of us can work with each other more directly that way, and at least be more stable vibrationally, so that we're not like it's like minimizing weak links in the chain is important. So sometimes when we do a bigger public group, and a lot of people you don't know, it can be more challenging because you have a lot of other back doors to deal with. People's subconscious shit comes up. It can be used as a Trojan horse for other things that want to intercept, or like add a background pollutant to the collective. Let's
reiterate that, because I think that's really important, because there's a lot of people that are starting to meet in groups and basically merge their coding and whatever modality or method they use. But what you're saying is that if somebody shows up to the party, so to speak, and they're not present and their mind is somewhere else, tapping into whatever part of their evolution of working the shadow out, whatever it is, that they might be a pipeline or an access point for those things that are working against us, something like that.
I've experienced it way too many times. And that's also why I usually try to, in the beginning, like ask when we first call the angels in, ask that everybody kind of puts the accountability card on the table and be like, okay, we don't, ask the angels to help kind of quarantine any unresolved shadow aspect of anyone individually, so it doesn't spill into the collective circle, and that we want to be able to help heal that. But if the person's not ready to heal it, we don't want to be victims of their unhealed self, because maybe they're not there yet, right? So it's saying that so starting with the intention that we don't consent to any of our unresolved emotional baggage, energetic baggage, shadow baggage to be used against us or anybody else in the circle, and we ask the angels to blanket us with a light circle, light sphere, to help quarantine and block out any other uninvited guests from trying to use that as a co-opting influence. So having a clearer line, like, okay, we're not consenting to that. We don't want to have a little play here that way.
You're in Brooklyn, right? By the way, that link that was up, somebody asked, that's from his last. It was Chinese, a week before the Chinese New Year. That was his last meditation.
Chinese New Year's Eve. That was from the new moon.
So you click that.
It was very
you go to
powerful
Dropbox.
when we got rid of some of this negative grids. Yeah, yeah.
God, okay. Oh, I was gonna just. I know this is kind of a joke, but it's not. Uh, Given the now, you're in Brooklyn. You're in Brooklyn, right? Are you in Brooklyn or
Yeah.
Manhattan? Oh, Brooklyn.
Yes.
So,
In Brooklyn.
like, I
I'm
mean,
actually looking for a new roommate, by the way. FYI.
you got a new roommate?
Can you imagine that? No, I have a two-bedroom here, but my roommate just moved out, so I'm looking for a new roommate. As a side note, in case any
Brooklyn.
wonderful callers have any friends here,
Call out
it's
to
a very good deal
Brooklyn.
actually too.
Allison of New
Yeah,
York.
yeah. Side note.
Louis Machi. Anybody knows someone in Brooklyn? Um, so, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. For anyone that's watched any of the previous shows, you've been tapping into this since a very like right after the teens, early 20s, right? I mean, you've been involved in this a long time. Do you ever walk out on the streets in New York and
I
you
mean,
got some?
I started doing group work back in the late '90s. I mean, so
Right, right. That's I mean 20. That's what I
a long
mean.
time
Oh,
ago.
hell, I didn't wake up till 2011. But do you ever? And I know this is halfway a joke, but are you ever walking the streets and you got some black uh, Tahoe with dark tinted windows following you and stuff?
I mean, not in a long time, but oh no, there used to be so many things going on with stuff like that. You know, certain neighbors, the old place I moved into, and they had sent some spooks to move in a few doors down, and you know, it's like there. I mean, there used to be so many people I used to run into coincidentally,
Mm,
like over the years, and but this is more like back in the day when more like early mid 2000s or like when I had more of that going on, and now it's like they kind of keep more of their distance most of the time. Oh no, I have back in 03, you know I was in a mine. I was out in Yucatan, just a little solo trip, and I was doing some good work out there, and I met a UFO researcher who was shooting a documentary about UFOs that were flying over the Yucatan. He showed me some raw footage of some cool orbs that were flying over the pyramids, and the other guy I meet there was a Green Beret who I just ran into in the middle of the jungle, and nobody else was there except him walking in front of me. And he wants to like start hanging out with me, and the UFO guy, I'm like, like it's a little weird because I
what?
just had talks with the NSA guy before that, and I
Yeah,
got a
they
special
probably
forces
dropped him
guy
from
wants to
one of
hang out with me,
those.
and
Yeah, they probably dropped him from one of those silent helicopters, like 50 yards behind you. Yeah.
well, exactly. It was years later because it evolved into a whole crazy story because, I was busting his chops to be like, hey, there's no way he just met you by accident here. You know, he kept trying to like pretend like you just ran into him by accident, and then like he was stationed in Fort Bragg, and then, then he got kind of to like one of these like triple canopy, like a Blackwater company going to Afghanistan, Iraq. But then he would come visit me in New York. I want to stay at my place for like a couple of weeks and just hang out with me. And I'm
What?
like,
Dude, I don't even know you, man.
no, dude. Somebody, but he at a higher level, I actually knew him on the soul level. So I was like, I kept putting up, we did some work on him too. Like, okay, I could see all the other weird ET shit that you went through, and you had some weird experiences you talking about, when he was the Army Ranger training, and like a group gray abduction that happened during one of the big training exercises they went through, and
Okay,
they all thought it
so
was a dream, but him and his partners all had the same dream about grays coming into the base and experimenting on them and things like that.
so
So
okay, let me ask you
but
this: how can if even it's half of what's actually true, and I'm talking military, and I'm talking contractors, and I'm talking bureaucrats, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, scientists, and 170 plus underground bases, whatever. How in the hell? And I know there's a few whistleblowers here and there, and half of them I think are plants, but that's for everyone's own discernment. But
yeah.
how in the hell can they keep literally
Sure.
millions of people quiet? How the hell does that happen? I know a lot of people get
It's amazing,
killed.
right?
I know
I
three
mean,
crypto millionaires just got killed last month, and they're all very
oh
suspicious,
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, how in the hell can you keep so many people quiet? Like where one day they just say, "Fuck this shit, let's go outside." 1,000 of us walk out there and pull the press and say, "This is what's really happening." I mean, there's got to be something
I
more
think that'd
than
be
the
great.
threat. Yeah,
I
I'm just
think they
saying.
usually nip
Yeah.
it in the bud before it reaches that critical mass. Like if there was that many of them being like people, especially that are in the more covert, special access programs and or unacknowledged ones, where the real funky technologies are being used. There's so much micromanagement and monitoring that goes on with those levels. But even look what happened, like Edward Snowden. I mean, he came up with some great documents about the NSA and the surveillance state and all the things that were going on, and look how hard they pushed him out of the limelight. although he had a lot of good material that came out, but there were still other documents he had that he still never released that probably goes deeper into some of the juicier material beyond
He
that scope.
didn't.
How they try to hack
Really?
our brain, not just our computers.
So, are you
you know.
telling me that now he didn't release everything? Well, they would still have it, though,
I
wouldn't
mean,
they?
I've heard stories about that, but I mean, even Gary McKinnon, remember that one, that
Yeah,
hacker,
yeah,
that British hacker who
yeah.
hacked into NASA, a few other ones, and he saw descriptions of different fleets and ships we had that the Navy had that were off-world fleets, and
Right, right.
they wanted to get his ass arrested so bad, and so that so
Did
there's
they kill? Did they kill him? What
I
happened to
mean,
him? Did they,
no,
did,
he's still in England. But even on the basic level, I mean, I've had some scientist friends of mine and their friends that were blacklisted or were taken out when they were trying to bring out free energy devices.
yeah.
And some of these guys worked in some underground facilities, or they were. One guy he was asked to work at a facility in Las Vegas years ago, a smaller company that got bought up by a bigger defense contractor. They had a laboratory underneath one of the casinos. Literally, not even talking about Area 51, just right under. They would access it through the parking lot elevator in a casino, parking lot.
The
Special
Bellagio.
access card goes underground.
Bellagio. Yeah.
It was probably, I would not be surprised. There's probably a lot of them now. This is you've gone back years ago. It was a small company called EG&G that got bought up. I can't remember if it was who bought them up, but anyway. But he was asked. He was shown some equipment down there. It was basically like a recruiting assignment. They wanted to show him stuff. He wanted to work for them, and he came down and he goes, he was seeing crazy like holographic computer systems, and I mean technology is like, wow, this is way more advanced than I've seen anywhere else. Then he also saw a dormitory and cafeteria underground. Then he realized, wait a minute, if I accept this job, they're not going to let me see the surface much. I'm going to be literally living down here while working with them. So he turned it down, and the recruiter got so pissed at him. He's like, he goes, we'll let you live, is what he said. He said, we'll let you live, but you're blacklisted now. So he got blacklisted, couldn't get any scientific job anywhere in this country after that, just for saying no. That's not even like exposing anything.
Yeah,
like security red flag would show up all the
that
HR
Bob,
recruiting facility, any place to get a job, Homeland Security red flag.
That's crazy. That Bob Dean, his dad started, not Dean, Bob Lear. His dad started Lear Corporation,
Yes.
Learjet. And I don't know. I mean, to me, he seems pretty believable, but who knows? It could be a lifelong propaganda, But he talked about, let's see, it was near Area 51, or may have been Area 51. He was talking about where he was involved with the construction, or was in on the construction of this underground base. Anyway, long story short, they were shipping all these people from Vegas, and it was like 3 or 4 or 5,000 people, and they developed a underground, one of those fast trains. It took like 23 minutes to get there, and but they were saying that they actually had to put it into a parking lot beneath the Bellagio, because they couldn't have all these people coming in and out every day. They had to hide.
Being suspicious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and the same thing here in New York. Speaking about underground trains, I don't know if I ever mentioned it before, but one of the secret trains that goes across the country here that goes from New York to LA, like in 3 hours, literally, part of that underground military rail system. There's a location. If anybody visiting New York, you can walk by the building. It's at 354 West 54th Street is the exact address of it. 354 West 54th, between 8th and 9th Avenue. There's actually entrance on 53rd Street side. And I had an ex-girlfriend lived in the area, and many years ago, and I walked by there, and I kept feeling this energy coming off the building, like it was like this projection technology. I was like, "What is going on in this building? Like somebody's doing something shady here that I want us to know about." And they have cameras outside, all looking in different directions, and and I was like, I started peeking in. There's no markings, and when you look just in the indoor of the entrance, there's like armed security booth and like look like subway turnstiles, and it said no cameras allowed in this facility. And I'm like, all right, something is going on here. I remote view it, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's one of the underground train systems there. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I started just asking random people walking in there, what's going on here? And there were a bunch of Russians that worked there, and someone was like, trying to make some excuses, but then then they were like, oh, it's part of the MTA command center, one of the MTA's command or metropolitan transportation authority, like the ones around the subway system. Basically, it's one of their little command centers. They have a few of them. But that's like a cover story for what's going on deeper below ground. I was like, oh, I never thought about MTA subway people connections and this underground rail system in New York. So then I started digging deeper, and then realizing that we had a friend who had worked in transit, and he actually worked in that building. Found out through a mutual friend. He confirmed that there was a secret train system there. And then when I moved here to this place in Brooklyn, a neighbor had back he's since moved, but he lived next door to me. He worked for the MTA for 20 years, and he just starts talking to me and complaining about how messed up MTA was and upper management, how screwed up they are, which I was like, yeah, they really are. And and I was like, hey, do you know anything about that building, you know, about the underground rail system? And he goes, oh, yeah. And he also like, oh, so you mean the one on 54th Street? He goes, yeah. I was like, oh, shit, you know about them? And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, the command centers. He goes, yeah, one level below is a shelter they have for, like, you know, in case there's a disaster and people want to go, you know, protect it. But below the shelter, there's the secret the rail station. He goes, as a matter of fact, he goes, upper management MTA, if they want to take a quick vacation, they'll just go there and they'll be in LA in 3 hours. So it's not just being used by military. That's some
serious bullshit. It's
the quid pro quo where they actually, you know, use stuff like that perks.
But hey, I'm just saying, like,
you know, tell anybody about it.
I mean, that's such a itty bitty part of the technology being withheld. You know, just something like that. How many people could get to the deathbed of a relative or, you know, whatever? I mean, and I personally believe that they're all over the world. I personally believe that, you know, I could go from somewhere in the States to Australia in, you know, 7 or 9 hours or whatever it is, these high speeds. I mean this, and even if you consider the level of technology, that the little bit that's been leaked out, I also wonder, you know, this stuff couldn't have just been from World War II forward. You know, like Roswell period. This has to be some old ancient stuff. You know, almost like they were pre-existing.
Well, I mean, there were old papers from Rand Corporation, Rand think tank, you know, and pictures of the big Air Force, like, you know, tunnel boring machines back in the 70s, where Rand had done a study about building these underground tunnels for like transportation, you know, kind of like what Elon Musk is thinking, like he's inventing something new when Musk is just rehatching old shit that's already been around.
True.
You know, and he's actually working, I don't trust him at all. He's working with he's not a controlled opposition guy, but he's working with some of the negative Sirius B extraterrestrials.
He's working with Sirius B. He's working with, wait. He's working with Sirius.
that negative Sirius B group I talked about before.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't trust.
Yeah, I haven't either. There's two. I mean, the good ones sound good, but to be able to get you basically subsidized from the from the bureaucracy, and then also some of the logic, like just like this whole thing about going to the Mars out of nowhere when we haven't even been to the moon since the 70s, or at least, you know, what's been disclosed. I mean, it's just like, it's too much. It's like they think we're so stupid. That's the thing that drives me up the wall more than anything.
100%. It's literally like a whole different society, you know, and you mentioned about other global ones. I had another friend from Sweden, she had a friend in Norway who was an air helicopter like pilot, like military, you know, like really high level one. And sometimes he had to go on emergency assignments and that were in the U.S. and they had and he told about, you know, he took under a transcontinental underground train, you know, that went underneath the ocean from friggin' Norway out to the United States, you know, and
wow.
and when you need to be there faster than what the normal flights would provide, and so there are definitely other tunnels here that, you know, that are being used, you know, for sure, you know.
But you know, and so the thing is, and the thing is like, here we go again. Here's one friend of yours who's been on that train. How many people have been on there that got a little quid pro quo or whatever, or just got to go on there for whatever reason, and how do they keep their mouth shut? So I think there must be some type of, like you said, the micromanagement, but some type of technological
censorship
apparatus or detecting system or something where almost like they can hear your every word, you know, like you tell somebody.
Or if you try to put it out in the mainstream media, I mean, like how much the media is controlled. So if someone tried to go to a news reporter, and I thought about that too. Hey, why don't you guys do a story about this underground rail in 51st Street? Like, you know, would they publish it in the New York Post? Would there be a reporter trying to go out there when they just believe the story?
Hell
you know,
no,
obviously that's
no.
This is a point. Obviously, unless you show pictures of it underground or something, and that's also, you know, it's and that's still a lower level now, right? You know, the more advanced groups, you know, the bases, they use portal technology. They have portals. They walk through like a door, and they're in a different facility on the other side of the planet.
Man, I want that. Let's do that. This is what we need, man. Yeah. This is what we can actually. But you know, we can unlock this.
Real Stargate type movies.
That would be the you know, the physical evidence of the transformation, to be able to have access to this stuff, you know. But let me ask you this. who do you work with specific groups that we might know of or not know of? I mean, do you just kind of go out there and see what part of the team is going to be assisting you or facilitating you on that given day?
Combination. Usually I wait till the same day to find out and ask. Even sometimes I'll ask beforehand, should I meditate, see who wants to come in. Other times I just wing it, and they'll present themselves in the middle of it and be like, oh, okay, this group is here now and they want to help us out, So then we'll build a bridge of welcoming gratitude and see what messages they have and what thought forms that they want to help us coalesce together with, that they're projecting out, to us as an interface, say like a new template they want to help put on the earth, or a new geometry they're using to hold energy to help us connect to their realm, or, as a shamanic thing, the basic ideas, like having a medicine wheel, right, where each pathway goes out to a different kingdom or a different relationship you have. Say in this idea, an evolution of that concept, I call it a star heart medicine wheel, where each pathway goes out to a different star nation ally of yours that is waiting for you at a certain point on that pathway. So it'll be like, imagine being in a castle and you have a drawbridge, a circular room with drawbridges that go out to different gates. Gates that go out to different drawbridges and pathways. Each pathway goes out to a different, like, light city. Say one's Pleiadian, one's Arcturian, one's Andromedan. So they'll put certain crystals and energy fields in that pathway, and to help you kind of create the pathway, upgrade it, transmit energy through it. So literally, they become like thought forms that are operational once they're forged.
Right.
As a kind of like living light network system in which energy moves, consciousness can move through it like a corridor,
Right.
just like a car would drive on a roadway. These are like organized conduits through hyperspace, through the astral plane, that are being formed. And there are negative ones that have done the same thing. And that's what a lot of the negative groups have done, is they've tried to build their own little network systems in which they exchange and relay stuff between facilities, but the positive ones want us to amplify the good pathways, good like meridian systems that
Right.
are existing in hyperspace. So like usually, like there's one group from the Pleiades that's been coming in more recently from Alcyone. That's a higher light council, but they it's a more longer term phrase, but they call themselves the Universal Starheart Infinity Light Council. Universal Starheart Infinity Light Council. And the star heart is like, as a thought form we work with, is like a concept that it's an evolution of the heart chakra, where there are new chambers forming in the heart chakra that are allowing us to receive more love from our cosmic kin. And it's also forming in the Merkaba field as new kind of shafts of energy, roots that can go, like, say, for example, there's we call a star heart diamond, which looks like a big diamond field, and similar to the Great Pyramid having, the in the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, they have the conduits that line up to, say, Orion, or to different stars, to Sirius in the Queen's Chamber. Similar idea here is that there are conduits forming in each side of this diamond of light that goes to your heart chakra, and it can branch out to different star systems. And it's a beautiful structure, and the same thing is happening on a global level, where there are these, we call them star heart diamonds, that are forming a new kind of grid of connectivity. So that's like one example. So in this bigger concept, this universal star heart, so it's obviously more of like a larger thought form that connects across the universe, like a grid of love that engages geometry, that acts as a kind of positive web work.
Right.
That kind of connects worlds that have ascended in love and light, that are all kind of immersed in a certain vibrational space. And so to kind of access it, for me, it's like evolving some of the language, so we can work with these thought forms in a way that is more conducive to experiential
Right.
manifestation of these connections. And so like, for example, other Pleiadian priestesses, there's a few different groups there. There'll be one group that works with the goddess Ma'at, the Egyptian goddess of justice and balance and truth. So I would use the phrase Pleiadian star heart priestesses of Ma'at as kind of like part of the greeting
Right.
terminology.
Right.
So I call upon the Pleiadian star heart priestesses of Ma'at, and they happen to come from the star there that is Electra, that star system. That particular star, Electra, and so that they're beautiful, and and then there's another one from Taygeta star there, the neighboring star a few stars up in Pleiades. They're Pleiadian star priestesses of like a blue phoenix order that they call Arathena. And so they work into like a way of Isis depicted with a sun disk. They would wear like a beautiful blue sun disk as their crown and like a blue phoenix kind of like motif. And they're fifth dimensional beings, priestesses there, so they'll work and morph their bodies into beautiful blue phoenix like light bodies and project that energy out.
Man, let's get the party going.
So it's really, right? They're really beautiful. It's a whole level of them. They're like really amazing. And Hathor, Isis Hathor. There's a Pleiadian star priestess of Isis Hathor. They're in the Alcyone system and the Pleiades. So there's all these beautiful higher ascended groups of like priestesses and priesthoods that are helping that that have chapters around the galaxy that they spread.
Do you think that some of them? Do you think some of those would be the top? Some of them would be incarnated in physical form too on the Earth at the time.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And what do you know?
I've met so many of them.
I was going to ask you.
Pleiades and Arcturus, Sirius, Andromeda. A lot more Andromedas are coming too, though.
That's what I was going to ask you.
A lot of Andromeda star seeds.
What about? Do you know anything about Corona Borealis, the crown?
Wow. Yeah, that's been a long time. There is fascinating. There is a group of priestesses, higher dimensional priestesses that are connected to the goddess Ariadne or Ariane Rahad, like a Celtic triple white goddess energy. But Ariadne was the Greek goddess who was the, of course, she's connected with the positive spider energy, positive weaver energy. Like she's the one to help weave the thread that went through the labyrinth for Theseus to get his way out of there after he fought the Minotaur and like the Minotaur legend. So it was like following this, divine thread. So she's like positive mother weaver energy, basically. So there is a group of higher beings that work with that archetype that's on Corona Borealis. I've only I think met 2 people only all these years that were connected to that system from that group, and it's been a long time. But they work with the crown of their 7 stars, and it's a beautiful. There's a very unique feminine energy because it's really more needed now, I'd say, than ever, because we deal with so much. We've had to deal with so much dark spider energy that comes from Orion and like a negative set group and dark priestesses that are like dark spider priestesses are so nasty. That's a whole discussion. There's so much negative spider energy that's gone on this planet, with even in the projects and Series B group works with these little nano spider energies, like AI spider energies, and
what about
even some of the nanobots that are in a corona.
What about Series C? Do you know anything about Series C? Somebody asked.
Series C came in once for me only. There is some group there that I think there was another negative group there, but I didn't even want to go there. I was like, I deal enough with Series B. I didn't want to explore that.
You don't need
for free. Series A, I like, because Series A has got the positive ETs, have higher councils there, beautiful, higher evolved civilizations on Series A. But they have their bad neighbors, so they've had to do a lot of counter work. And and in fact, I worked on somebody recently who was a starseed. He was on a light council in Sirius A, but then he had a lifetime in one of these negative Apophis groups, and as well. And then they were messing with him hard and recently, and so it was like healing that duality, even amongst like reincarnated council members that have had lifetimes on both sides of the fence, that are now in human body, that are coming to try to reconcile that and create a bridge of how do we help to engage or counteract this stuff. So I think sometimes even it makes it more beautiful when you have higher star seeds that have had really high level roles splunk that deep into duality, because they understand that there's a necessity to help heal this on a fundamental level, and intercept it here on Earth. But it can go either way because it's very risky, to do that too. You get a lot of a lot of for it.
I've had quite a few people tell me over the last 2-3 years that they've ended up getting a private session with you. I just ran into somebody not even a couple of months ago. Everyone speaks very highly of it, and also people that have participated in your meditations, both there and virtually. When you do a session with someone, are they relaying the information to you, like say a QHHT type thing, or are you actually the intermediary, between? Are you okay?
Yeah, I would say more the intermediary. I mean, I'll check in with the client during different parts. Like for example, there's certain pains in the body they have, and initially what I do more so in the beginning is I'll do a pre-scan before I work with the person, before I actually start. So like I'll go through a list and see if there's any, especially because this year, so many people have had these negativity malware in their fields. That's the first thing I try to look for. And it's like, are there any chords this person has in any of their chakras to any negativity group? And I'll go through a list, and see which one, if any of them click, and then we'll fine tune that when we actually start the session. And then I'll be like, are there any implants in any of those chakras from these negativity groups? Then I'll be like, okay, are there any chords in their tree of life to these points to the ET groups? So, I do almost like a health scan a little bit first about that stuff to see, some basic things, and other things come up when I'm actually engaging them, but it just makes it a little faster, easier if I know a few things ahead of time. Okay, like this person's got, a chord in their heart chakra to reptilian base, or they have a chord in their throat chakra to Series B base in Arizona. Like we'll track exactly where it's coming from, so then it's easier to get rid of it, and close the door to that location. If that's something that's relevant to the person, not everybody has that, obviously. That's like part one,
Right.
Like and then we'll go into like, okay, is this a person a starseed? Where are they? What star system are they from? That's relevant for me to bring up to them now, and then we'll go into that as an example. Then I'm like, okay, are there any past lives we need to look into that are relevant for them now? And especially if there's any shadow past lives that we need to heal, then I'll look into that, and then so that becomes a blend that's filled in with other things in between. Right. That comes in naturally. Then I'll check in with them. Like, okay, after we get the cord off, because usually people have more than one cord or more than one implant in their field. So like, okay, after we get rid of that, how is that part of your body feeling now? Are you feeling any shift there? Then I'll check in with them verbally, and depending upon their answer, like, okay, that's good. Now we'll go to the next part. And then sometimes other pains may surface because we're clearing it like an onion. And then like, okay, like, oh, so now my
exactly.
hips are,
Some things might not be.
there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And do they have one for when your hair's falling out and your hair won't stop falling out?
I haven't seen that.
I'm kidding. Okay,
then I'm dealing with my labs. It's a whole other level. People that are in the programs, that's a whole other level of clientele that gets more involved. Because then I have to look. Okay, does this person have a clone? Where are the clones at? Because usually that's every my lab I've worked on has had clones. Have you
met anyone over the years that's I know everybody's different. We're all different. We all have our own soul signature. But like, have you met anyone that's pretty close to, your makeup, like your methods, your connections?
Yeah, well, there are definitely some, of course, that I have my own little people, my little team of a handful of people that we kind of check in with each other and help each other out when shit goes bad, because you definitely need to have multiple eyes on situations, especially when it gets as complex and crazy as some of the things we've seen, and especially if I'm in the middle of working, sometimes I get backlash from working on certain clients, too, especially if they're in the MyLab or SSP community. I'll have to dodge more attacks, and sometimes those attacks are not easily or not instantly perceived, and they'll hit me in a way that hurts physically. I'm like, oh fuck, what's this? I need to go in there, and sometimes I'm confused with, especially because I usually get hit with more. I don't know. I seem to have a little contract I had to release where they'd be testing out all their new toys on me over the years. so I'd get the updated models of their Psychotronic and DWs. And I'm like, oh no, what the hell is this now? And I'm like, okay, I don't consent to that, or but then I understand about it, and almost like homeopathy as I I'm like a bit of a, what do you call it? For me, I treat it like my little, kind of like a boot camp, magical boot camp. So if I got hit with something progressively several times and it keeps coming in, then at a certain point, after I heal it, I understand more of its methodology, more of its feeling, more of its structure, and then I could develop more countermeasures against it more easily, help people kind of also have that template. So it's a bit of almost like homeopathy.
Right. Everyone has their own. Yeah. Okay. So the last 6 nights have been markedly different, and I'm a pretty good lucid dreamer, but they've been markedly different, both in lucid dream and when I'm conscious and connecting, laying in bed, to include a larger than normal, and I haven't seen multitudes and multitudes of orbs, but I've had my experiences over the years. This one was particularly large. It was probably the size of maybe something like this, light blue, very prominent, and actually and it was only 3 or 4 seconds. I was actually talking to Morgan on the phone. I'm like, am I seeing that? And then once I realized there was no reflection because the closet was open, and I looked. But yeah, I don't get caught up in that. But the last 6 nights, so let's just say the last week.
Well, no, that's interesting you said that, because I've had somebody else too have some, but they were like these negative orbs that came in, and it was from Series B group, because the person was actually had seen something in my field that I was clearing, because they were projecting this other shit in my eye. They were trying to get into my field, little negative vortexes they were trying to push in my face, and they spotted it, and then I saw, we cleared out. Then they started getting hit with this like weird AI. It looked like these almost like an R2D2 thing coming in their room, and then these other orbs, they start seeing them come in really strong, and with little tentacle things. And it was, and we tracked it to a base in Arizona. The Sirius B group has a base out there, and we're like, no, fuck you, we can't put this 4D, AI invasive, it's like bioetheric, manipulation technology in our space here, and then, have to clear out different constructs that they try to like overlay in the room, to where they want to connect you to their lab and shit, or they put like other outfits holographically. You got to peel off, like, no, I don't consent to being an experiment in your friggin' weird, quantum entangled 4D technology realm. Like, get the fuck out of here. But I don't know. So I'm saying, not all orbs are positive or negative, right? The orbs can be used by both sides.
Right.
Depends what the content. Is it a creepy orb that's trying to be invasive in you, or is it a loving, beautiful orb that's coming to heal you and be as a doorway to a higher realm? So I would say with orbs, you got to be just really like discerning and feel it out.
Well, yeah. If it don't feel right, for me anyway, I know right away if something doesn't feel right. But it didn't feel. It feels like the reason I asked the question is because, yeah, talking to you is so insightful, because you realize there's not, there's not per se one. Like say there's 3 solar flares hit us and the Schumann goes up and everybody's affected. But it really feels like in talking to you and other people, there's a whole bunch of influences in and around the world, both in the non-physical and physical. Now, for instance, like you mentioned Sirius B having an underground base. Well, so does this one and that one and this one and that one and all these other entities, which tells me who's running the program here. It's not the United States of America, obviously. It's almost like you got a copy of the world, where you have all these various types of species or cultures, and they're all coexisting, and they don't necessarily like each other, all of them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just kind of interesting. Yeah. But I thought maybe something had a wave or something was coming or something. It felt like these last 6 nights. Wow. I'm like going, what the hell is going on here? The connection I'm having
there has been.
Has there? Okay.
I would say for sure, especially because the entrance of Chinese New Year and also with the Earth, there's a lot of shifts going on all the time. But that's also one reason why they throw a lot of this stuff out at people, especially when there are like a precursor to solar flares or bigger energies coming in. They'll usually put more chemtrails over areas to try to block the energy coming in, or they'll put more of these projections in the grid just to try to sabotage people's relationship to healthfully integrating the new energy. So sometimes some people make these lists I've seen on Facebook where they call them Ascension symptoms. I'm like, lady, half of your list there are direct energy weapon symptoms. They're not Ascension symptoms, half of these. I'm like what? That's actually what's trying to block you from the Ascension energy.
So like what would be direct energy implications that people would confuse as Ascension symptoms?
Well, like I mentioned before about this grid that just got taken down with the Joker group, those negative, there are grids that are formed from electromagnetic technologies that are beaming out from different antennas. Think even the basic, 5G grids that are from, that span a certain area, those Wi-Fi, they can modulate and manipulate those basic electromagnetic fields to like insert things into people's fields. They were using that originally where the cell phone towers could be used by DoD to step up the voltage and the amperage of the microwave so they can be like a remote taser coming at you. I've experienced that, unfortunately, on multiple occasions where they used a Wi-Fi and it was like, felt like I was being fucking tased, and I was like, holy shit, what's coming on there? And I was tracking it to like DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. I'm like, get the hell out of here. You can't try to freaking tase me like that, using the technology, but shit is real. It hurts when it comes at you like that, and you understand, I've spoken to other people over the years too, with somebody who worked in microwave towers, and I said, there's different volume settings, and the way they have the cell towers is that they can handle a lot more wattage than people realize, and there's whole other sections of them that the military can use if they want to access it, the NSA and stuff, DIA. So if they want to convert that soul tower into a microwave weapon system, or influential system, that they can tweak it and then and use your Wi-Fi also. And that's why I always turn off the Wi-Fi when you go to sleep, for sure. Like, don't have that on when you're sleeping.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
That's more grounded technology. They use other quantum entanglement technologies, quantum computer systems, satellite stuff too, that gets more involved. But no matter what they throw at you, the point is you can defend it if you understand a little more about what's happening, and if you're calling in, more assistance and protection, and strengthen your own chi energy flow, and dealing with your shadow, and making sure that you're really kind of blessing your home, interior, exterior, filling it up with I always try to expand like angelic domes of light, or like, say if I call on the Pleiadians, I'll be like Pleiadian star priestesses. There's in the group, they're like Pleiadian star heart, Merkaba dome priestesses, Pleiadian star heart, Merkaba dome priestesses. So they can come in and create these beautiful geodesic domes of like blue concentric light to help shield your area. So I'll stack stuff. I'll be like, Archangel Michael, give me a beautiful golden solar dome around my home and my body, or I'll go through each angel, and if I really want to do it, make it concentric. So you have like concentric domes of light over.
That's how it's been shown to me.
From each angel.
Yeah, the concentric
of the tree of life, or from the directions. Yeah. It's very important and very powerful. To kind of like claim your territory that way. Almost like your greenhouse for your garden on an energetic level, and like weatherproofing it to make sure there's no leaks and things like that. And is important too.
Yeah, I remember 2016. I was just about to hit the road for and start all this, and it was Lionsgate, because I left October 13th, so it was Lionsgate, and they came in. There was like 22 or 23 different entities were in the original studio, but it was an amping up, and they were showing me 3 circles, and they were putting a third one out, and they told me that you were only as strong as your faith in yourself, therefore in the circles around you. Because they were showing me who was out there. It was like the Hathors, Amazons. Wow. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But they showed me that. And then if you look at Atlantis, the capital city, which you can see in the eye of the Sahara, it's like that. It's got those circles going around. Concentric circles. Dude,
I think the Eye of Sahara was like a colony that was modeled after the capital of Atlantis.
Oh, really?
Because that's because Atlantis spanned such a huge distance across the Atlantic Ocean, and was massive. So but they had colonies they built in so many locations.
There is a really good. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Bright Insight. Is the name of the YouTube channel. The guy's really, really in depth, and he was on Rogan about 2 weeks ago, and there's a few clips from it. And there's some other people that have talked about it. Randall Carlson, Graham Hancock, where there was, that whole storyline. And then the anthropology and archaeological aspects of it, the erosion aspects of it, and it's really interesting. Not that I'm not saying that was or wasn't, but it was built, in those concentric circles, and then
absolutely, no, it's true.
And then the data, the 11,600 years on the dot, when that thing came through, this, evidently the tsunami that went through that east to west northern part of Africa, but anyway, wow, man, this has been cool. I think what we should do, if you wanted to do, now, how long do you think a meditation would take if we?
I mean, I can customize it because
you can do your normal thing. We've already went almost 2 hours today. I didn't even ask you.
I know, it's true. Yeah. I would say, when I'm doing my normal new moon, full moon thing, for example, it can be like hour 20 minutes. It can be a little longer than that. Depends. That's cool. Some are longer, some are shorter.
Well, I think if you're interested, then why don't you just pick we'll do the same time. If you want to, 3:00, and just pick a date in February. Any date, 7 days a week I'm going, so, and then that way I will, that way I don't have to send you a bunch of dates and times, because I don't really have much in February booked, just a couple, day 1 and 2 maybe. But just pick a date and send it to me, and I'll put it on the calendar, and we'll do a full blown, whatever date you want to do it.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll I'll look at that and see what comes up.
Right on.
That'll be
All
good.
right.
That sounds
Hey,
awesome.
I
Time
really,
did fly by, didn't it?
huh? What's that? Yeah, no.
Time does fly by so much for us.
I kept going. Oh, should I tell him? Can we go another half hour? But no, I like the long play when it's interesting and flowing.
I did too.
Like
So much ways to go into. There's so many spin off, especially our style. So it's like a fractal conversation.
I know. Exactly. Well, people seem to enjoy it. They enjoy it. They enjoy it because you are unique, and there's no doubt about that. Well, listen, man.
My double Gemini comes out.
Yeah. Have a good rest of the month, and we'll see you next month, and jump into one of your
awesome.
journeys.
Awesome,
and I look forward to it. Appreciate it, brother. You take care.
Likewise. Thank you, everybody. Love you.